So sometimes there may be situations where you kind of have to like dig deep on like why something is happening in your life. Let's say if you have an altercation with a neighbor, perhaps, it happens. And so sometimes I'll think, I'm being tested by the universe, or like, what is this lesson, trying to like teach me? Um, I've had, a lot of like obstacles in my life. I am a DV survivor, and I feel like I'm always trying to put out, you know, good energy, and I try to be a good person and things like that. So I have to reflect and think like, why are these things happening to me, or why do they keep happening to me? Like, I'm like, I feel like I'm not a bad person. Like, why am I getting bad karma? And then my all these things. And so I'm like, there has to be a reason for it. And basically, I feel like I've gone through these challenges in life, so I can help others.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Truth That Heals podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Anthony Hernandez, and today I'm with special guest CC Tabor. CC Tabor is a U.S. Army veteran who has proudly served as a combat medic, a mother of two sons, and a passionate animal lover. She values healing, connection, and truth in her personal life and writing. In addition to her writing, she is a travel advisor, a nutrition coach, and a sound healer. Welcome to the podcast, Cece. How are you doing today?
Thank you. Thank you. How are you? Thank you for having me.
I'm doing great, and I see you have a book which is Success Through Spirituality. Can you tell us from the very start, what is your book all about?
Sure, I will show you it. So this is what it looks like. And basically it is an autobiography actually. And it's kind of like a basic introduction to spirituality, or spirituality on a day-to-day basis. How can we connect with our soul, our life purpose, and kind of how do we overcome obstacles and challenges in life, and kind of like what are the lessons that we're learning through those challenges. So that's kind of where the book came from, just years of writing notes in my phone, when something came up, and what is the lesson to learn. And sometimes when they're in the middle of a situation, you don't realize, you know, oh, okay, this is why this is happening. But sometimes after the fact, you're like, wow, I'm sure glad that that happened. And had that not happened in my life, I wouldn't be here. So um, after several of those types of things happening in my life, I decided, I was like, I should put this down on paper. And so basically, I designed each chapter kind of a lesson, or a point in my life. And at the end of each chapter, I kind of pose questions to the reader where they can kind of reflect on their own life. Have they been in a similar situation, or so it gives them the opportunity to kind of reflect and hopefully grow, at different challenges in their life. And then I threw in some, aspirational and inspirational coloring pages just to kind of break it up and hopefully not trauma dump on people too much. So,
Something that I got from your bio that I just read and that I got from your actual website are three things that you value: connection, healing, and truth. Were there any chapters in your life where these things were disordered, and instead of having connection, healing, and truth, was the opposite, maybe some brokenness or disconnection?
Definitely. There's actually a few chapters that I kind of deal with relationships. One was my marriage. I like to call myself a former people pleaser. um, Basically, I just like to, give and give and give, and then sometimes it depletes myself. So after a few relationships like that, I had to kind of do a self-evaluation and realize, I am, giving too much. I'm in relationships that are not reciprocal, and, sometimes these people don't actually, show me respect and value me. And in fact, they may not necessarily want me to win. um, so, so yeah, that was kind of hard to, take a look at that and to kind of heal from that. I've always kind of like thought the best of everyone and, think everyone has the best intentions. So that was kind of a hard lesson to learn, that, sometimes people may not necessarily have the best of intentions in relationships. So kind of learned from that and decided to kind of stay single for a while and get to know myself a little bit better and, learn to set boundaries. So that was, yeah, that was a few chapters,
Yeah.
a few lessons learned.
There's something that you mentioned that has actually been resonating with me this past week is people pleasing. So my question for you is, what is the most radical change that you had to apply in your life to start seeing less of that people pleasing and more of allowing yourself to shine?
So I think the biggest thing is saying no and learning that saying no is actually self-care. Whether it's saying no to, going out with your friends on a particular day or even just staying late for work, which is something that I would always do. I would always be early and I would always stay late, no matter what. Like it got to the point where I was late to my own children's like birthday parties. I, missed anniversary parties and things like that. So yeah, it kind of did take a toll on my life. And where, my friends, I was always, the fun person hanging out, and they would always kind of be like, "Oh, come on, it's not going to be the same without you." And then before I would just kind of like, all right, maybe I'll rally and get myself together and go out. And then by the end of the night, I would, be depleted and, need a day to recover or whatnot. And so, yeah, just kind of realizing that like sometimes saying no is okay. And yeah, so that was big. And, just, always just giving, whether it's like family, friends, work, and really just kind of setting those kind of boundaries.
And what was it that opened the door to having you see that it's okay to have boundaries? Was there an influential person or maybe an influential book that wound up in your hands?
So it's interesting because you would think I would have someone that, I looked up to, but it was actually the opposite. It was actually a relationship that I had. It was very on and off for 6 years, and I kept going back, over and over, and would always start out great, and I was, let's start with a clean slate, and then towards the end, when we would end things, it was, like, okay, that's it. I'm not going back. And so I think finally the last time that I left, that was the turning point when I was just like, enough is enough. I have to choose myself. Um, and then I actually left. I was working in the legal field for 10 years. And I left this past year because I was like staying late. And then they would kind of give me a hard time when I would put in for overtime the next day. And I was like, well, I wasn't really staying late on my own accord. So, and my son was home from the army, and so basically I was missing time with him. And so, yeah, it got to the point where I was like, you know, enough is enough. You have to like choose you and choose your family. And, I was like, this is just not making me happy. So that's when I decided to start my own business.
And how was that, starting your own business? I mean, it's a big jump.
It is very scary. It's a very scary jump. And it's not for everyone. And pretty much the first year that you do it, you really don't make, money because you're kind of like pouring into things, starting the business, marketing and, everything that goes along with it. So it's a huge commitment. But for me, it was kind of like, this was like my sole purpose, in life. And, I've always enjoyed helping people, whether it was being, a medic in the military, or I used to volunteer when I was in high school at a shelter for women that went to AA and NA meetings. So just basically always trying to like help people. And I was like, that brought me joy and made me feel fulfilled. So I was like, can I make a living
Mhm.
doing this? And so that's kind of, how things evolved. And, I'm kind of 10 months into things. So far, so
Okay.
good.
And
And
and what is your business?
So I like to call it a wellness business, which I know is very generic, but for me, it's I focus on nutrition and kind of like healing, counseling people. I do like sound healing, and I'm also a travel advisor, as you mentioned. So kind of like I see in like my future basically planning like retreats for people. Um, and I've worked a lot with wounded veterans in the past, done a lot of fundraising, and love to kind of work with people with like PTSD, things like that. And so that's kind of where I see that going. So we'll see.
And my next question is, what is a sound healer? If you can give us like a definition or an idea so we can understand exactly what that means.
Well, so basically, when people listen to music, you may or may not notice different music can uplift your mood. Sometimes they say if you listen to sad music, it can actually help you. So there's different like frequencies with music. So once you kind of understand the different frequencies, and you can kind of get into different instruments and things like that. So I basically did like a sound bath healing training. So it's with like sound bowls. We've done rain sticks and things like that. So basically, I like to tie it into yoga and breath work and like meditating and things like that. I love to play music for my cat. So we like to meditate with music. I brought, this little drum that's called a panda drum, and I like to play it for her. And so, yeah, eventually I'd like to kind of incorporate that with, everything I do for work. So, just keeping options open.
So when you're driving, are you bumping the sound music that you have? This
I'm always listening to
are,
something,
are
always.
are you bumping that music or are you bumping Taylor Swift?
Well, I am a little sleepy because I did stay up for a lot of good songs, I have to say. Um, but yeah, I'm always listening to music. I grew up with, a family that appreciated music. My dad played three different instruments. He played Irish music, and my brother had his own radio show. And so it's kind of, there was always something playing. And even my older son, when he used to play with his toys, he always had this little soundtrack going. So he loves, movies and he's an actor. So yeah, he's always, so kind of in my life, whether it's like walking, going to the gym, cooking, things like that, I'm always listening to music. So yeah, I feel like it can definitely raise your vibration, and kind of make any situation better. And why not dance when
Yes. Yes. And what was it that actually introduced you to having this awareness for a need to have spiritual healing? Because for many people, even myself at times, it's nowhere on my radar.
um so sometimes there may be situations where you kind of have to like dig deep on like why something is happening in your life. Let's say if you have an altercation with a neighbor, perhaps, it happens. And so sometimes I'll think, I'm being tested by the universe, or like, what is this lesson, trying to like teach me? Um, and, I've had, a lot of like obstacles in my life. I am a DV survivor, and, I feel like I'm always trying to put out, good energy, and I try to be a good person and things like that. So I have to reflect and think like, why are these things happening to me, or why do they keep happening to me? Like, I'm like, I feel like I'm not a bad person. Like, why am
Mm.
I getting bad karma, and then my all these things? And so I'm like, there has to be a reason for it. And basically, I feel like I've gone through these challenges in life, so I can help others. Whether they're, a single mother that's a DV survivor, or, a disabled veteran, or just someone who needs, healing. And so that's kind of how I look at my life right now. It's like, what are these challenges trying to teach me? And that's kind of like for me, like spirituality, kind of where it stems from.
How has spiritual awareness given you the tools to take care of yourself and to ultimately also take care of those who you love?
Well, I talked a little bit about self-care, but also kind of realizing like what brings me joy, and kind of as I've grown, I don't want to say aged, but as I've matured, I feel like, what brings me joy is different. So right now, what brings me joy is, having peace and having time with my family and spending time in nature and, with animals. Um, so, so yeah, that's for me. I kind of connect the dots like with spirituality and kind of and just realizing, sometimes you have to let things go, and maybe the purpose in life, isn't just to like acquire things. And so that's kind of why I named the book why how I did, success through spirituality, because it kind of made me reflect on what exactly is success. Is success, acquiring lots of things, or having many houses and cars and things like that, or is it really finding your true passion and your purpose and, what brings you joy? So that's kind of how I look at it.
And let's go back to your book for a moment. It is published already, correct?
It is. It's available on Amazon.
Okay. And what can people learn without revealing the whole entire book, of course, but what can people learn or expect when they pick up a copy of this book?
Um, So as I said, I kind of tried to like break it down so it's not too much like trauma dumping. I do have some, funny stories about my life. But I also try to make it something that the reader can pick up and look at and relate to. As I said, at the end of each chapter, I pose questions to the reader. Um, and have some pages where they can draw, they can journal. For me, journaling helps me a lot. I kind of meditate and write things down. My notes section is a kaleidoscope of everything between kitchens that I like and pictures of the beach to random thoughts on neighbors per se. And so yeah, that's kind of how the book came about. So yeah, it's hopefully I kind of focused everything. And so I feel like my message is to try and find like positivity in things, and as I said, learning the lessons in life. And sometimes you're in the middle of things, you can't realize like why did this happen. I was in a pretty bad car accident when I was going back to school at age 40, and my car was totaled, and I was going to school to be a paralegal, and I was late for a class, and I was very distraught. And my professor, who was an attorney, happened to pull up on the screen during our break, when I apologized for being late, and was like, all right, this is everything you're going to do. You're going to hire an attorney. You're going to make sure your medical bills are at least $2,000. You're going to do this. And so basically, I did do that. I went and I hired an older gentleman that was an attorney in my area, and he was kind of having trouble writing things down. And I had my legal pad, and I was like, what do you need? I'll help you. And then I just happened to say, well, I'm going to school to be a paralegal if you ever need any help. And he said, I'm all set right now, but thank you. And a couple of weeks later, I was dropping off pictures of where the scene happened. And he asked if I was still looking for a job. And I said, yes. So I wound up working for him for years. And he helped me get my next job at a big law firm. And so, yeah, kind of looking at things in hindsight, I was like, it was one of the best things that could have happened to me. So that's kind of how I look at, life and life lessons. And I've had a number of things that have kind of like had me pivot, and but hopefully I used them to my advantage in the end.
Yes, life can really have some unexpected turns, but it's good to hear a story like yours. And something that I got from your book, from the your website, is that the book doesn't preach, but it shares. I would like to ask you now, can you share with us what you've learned from the experience of actually writing the book and getting it published?
Okay. Well, I also had a lot of lessons learned on that. Um, I actually hired a company to help me ghostwrite the book because I was like, I just want to make sure this is like readable for people. I was like, I enjoy writing, but I wouldn't call myself a writer per se. So I was like, let me hire a company. And so I, did some research, hired a company, and they're like, well, we can offer you, this package where we can help you market it. Um, and so it actually took us probably 6 months from that point, where they, recorded me, interviewed me and recorded me for every chapter. And kind of like as we went along, we were adding different like marketing aspects and things like that. So, I spent quite a bit of money. And, after the 6 months, I realized they had done no marketing. Um, and I was supposed to have an audio book. I designed a completely different hardcover book. I wanted it more like a journal, and that wasn't coming together. And so there were, some red flags kind of going along the way. And so basically what happens is they actually did no marketing for me. And Actually, I'm still continuing to fight to get some of my money back. So, some lessons that I learned with that is definitely do a lot of research. You really shouldn't have to pay anyone um, to publish your book. Actually, it's the other way.
Yeah.
They should be paying you. But I've tried to turn that into some positives. Learned a lot about marketing, starting my own podcast.
Yeah.
um, so, and I've done a ton of like connecting with different authors and readers on social media. I love Threads. Um, and, basically, if I hired a company to do everything, I wouldn't have had that experience. So I feel like things are going to work out, in my favor in the end. So still kind of in the thick of it a little bit, but, just trying to keep a positive attitude and, I post every day on social media. I love my Canva app. I'm really having fun with that. So, as I said, it's, definitely some lessons learned, but, I know I'm going to come out on top.
There you go. And now, well, thank you for sharing about your book. And you said it's on Amazon. So those who are in the audience, maybe this can be like a marketing scene as well. Those in the audience can go and get a copy of your book and
Sure, that would be awesome.
even share it with others. But now to wrap up this episode, my question for you is the same question that I ask to every guest, and that is, what is your truth that heals?
What is the truth that heals?
What is your truth that heals that you want to share?
Oh boy. Well, not to sound redundant, but I feel like there's kind of a lesson to be learned in everything. I read a great book. It's called Many Lives, Many Masters. Definitely recommend it. I apologize, I don't know the author, where it talks about people having different lives. And so, kind of like you have different lessons to learn in each lifetime. I kind of feel like this may be my last one because I've learned a lot. And so, basically, it's like this is why we're here. We're here to, learn lessons and, yes, of course, to like have fun and bring joy to people. But, for me, it's like learn lessons through positivity. That's kind of that's me, and try and have fun doing it with, you know, don't forget to dance.
There you go. Well, thank you so much, CC Tabor, for being a guest on the Truth That Heals podcast. And for those of you who are in the audience, don't forget to subscribe, to like, share, comment. And if you're listening to this over on Spotify, please go ahead and share this so that other people can hear the Truth That Heals from our guest of today, CC Tabor. And again, CC, thank you so much for being an amazing guest on this podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.